All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the 11 Yank Show. And I'm excited to have the CONCACAF Council reunite yet again, both to look at the last window, which we didn't really cover yet in a post sort of window video, and also to look forward into the next window. And it's especially exciting because we're all playing each other in this window. So that makes this episode of the CONCACAF Council assemblage even cooler. Guys, we have Josh from JJD TV, our Canadian fan. JD from Jamaica, who's feeling a lot better after this last window, I'm imagining. And Owen Diana, who is, the American representing Mexico in this panel, quaking in his boots because he's going to have to face both the U.S. and Canada in the same window. Guys, so excited to have you.
What do you have?
Great to be here, Pete.
Excited as well.
That was like a delayed reaction there. Everyone was like, am I supposed to say something?
Heard something in the background. I'm sure that was.
Is that your daughter, JD?
Yes, this is my daughter in the background. Sorry about that.
No. If she comes, bring her on the show. We'll see what she thinks about Jamaica. Like, who's your favorite player? So, guys, I thought since we didn't actually get to this before, it was a bit sort of a busy month for me, we could talk briefly, go around in a circle, and just sort of recap, each of our team's last window, the performance, the results, and then give a quick rating from A+ to F- on how you think the team did in that window, and then we can start looking forward. So, JD, why don't you start?
Oh my God. I know. Guess what? Tell you guys, I'm a little bit up here due to the fact that we got 4 points. That's a lot of points. Because at first we thought that Canada would have actually steamrolled us. But the fact that the Canadians were so confident, they literally left off some of their better players, saying that they're looking for the next game. So thanks for that 1 point. We will take it. And then we went to Honduras and did smash and grab, to be honest, because Honduras, they were better on the ball. They created so much chances. Elise was so much of a problem, but they just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. So thanks to them, yet again, we got all 4 points. But against United States, I think we got a reality check how good these guys are on their day, because sometimes they just seems to not want to turn up. I don't know if it's the manager and the players not really getting on or something. But in the Jamaica game, they really clicked and delivered a midfield solid performance. I thought that McKennie was very, very good. Tyler Adams was pretty much incredible for his size. He's like a diminutive human being, and he's literally dominating a 6'4" guy, which is Shamar Nicholson. So he did a very good job, so at least we learned some things, but we are going to get into that a little bit further. But I'm very much grateful for the 4 points, and I'm very much happier.
Yeah. Where do you stand in the table now?
We should be just above El Salvador right now.
So you're 6th or 5th?
I think we should be, fifth?
You're 5th,
no, we should,
right?
Yes, we should. Sixth, because
Yeah.
Costa Rica is above us. Just the same, 6th.
Okay. All right. So, JD, would you do the rating then? What do you think between A+, just on that window alone, and F-? What do you give them?
I want to give them a C+, because at least they really recovered from that USA game. It could have went downhill, and these guys show maturity and decide that they're going to go out and try and salvage their pride. So
Right.
at least they went out and get something. So, guys, C+ is, I think it's fair, Yeah, C+.
Yeah. And now you're back in contention, right? It almost looked like they were drifting away, but now they're very much in that chasing pack to at least, contend for 4th spot, right?
Yes, I would say so. But tell you what, these 2 games coming up against United States and El Salvador will be a reality check, because we have to get something. We have to get at least 3 points out of this to stay alive, because or at least you get 2 points with 2 draws. So we hold back individuals to have a mathematical chance to go ahead. But losing both games, I think it's over, to be honest. So yes.
All right. So, Owen, why don't you talk about Mexico's window?
Okay, so another 7-point window for Mexico, which I think it's what's most important at the end of the day. They're now 2/3 of the way to that magic 21-point mark. So with less than half of the octagonal done, they're in really good shape as it relates to the qualification campaign. They're in first place in the octagonal. So although Mexico have made all these World Cups in a row, over the previous 6 qualifying campaigns, they'd only actually ever finished first in the hexagonal once, and that was in 2018. So they're on track to potentially do it twice in a row, which would be impressive. Getting Chucky Lozano and Raul Jimenez back from injury was the big story in October. I think those 2 players came back and both made a difference. Chucky gets an assist against Canada, scores the 3rd goal against Honduras, was also crucial in setting up the first goal against Honduras, the opener, with some defensive work. And then Raul Jimenez gets the 2nd goal against El Salvador. So having both of those players back scoring for Mexico, contributing for Mexico, and then both playing well now for their club teams, looking forward to November, is really important. But I think in October, I'm not sure the problems that Mexico have had now for months with Tata Martino were necessarily resolved. There was still a struggle to create a lot of good chances, particularly against Canada. They were outplayed at the Azteca. And then scoring chances, I think finishing was still difficult. The few chances that were presented, there was still some wayward finishing. So those are 2 things that Mexico are going to have to look to fix. I think in the long run, having a Raul Jimenez in there over Rogelio Funes Mori, having that superior forward there, I think will help with the finishing. Also, Chucky Lozano is a really good finisher coming in from wide positions. I think there was an issue that showed itself in the Canada match that hadn't really been there before in midfield. That was a strength for Mexico in the summer, even though they weren't convincing in the Gold Cup. Having Edson Alvarez and Hector Herrera there, partnering a 3rd midfielder, was a really effective duo, certainly. And those 2 both started against Canada alongside Andres Guardado. And I think with Herrera and Guardado, you have 2 veteran players, both not the most athletic anymore, don't necessarily have the legs to cover the ground that you need in midfield, certainly in the modern game. And I think Mexico were found out there. Canada nearly shaded the possession battle. Mexico ended up just having a little bit more possession, but you'd expect Mexico in a home qualifier at the Azteca to have upwards of 60%, 65% possession. I think they finished with only 52%. And they were beaten in that sector by the Canadian midfield. So that's a worry now for Mexico moving forward, especially because there isn't really a defined 3rd midfielder in there to partner Herrera and Edson Alvarez. You have a player like Charlie Rodriguez, you have a player like Sebastian Cordova, who both give you something a little bit different. You also have Luis Roma, who hasn't really been tried alongside Edson Alvarez in qualifiers yet, but I think could also do a job potentially as a 2nd number 6, playing maybe a little bit more advanced of Edson. Then you could have Hector Herrera in front of them if you were trying to play a little bit more defensive. But it's more of a horses for courses situation. There isn't a defined 3rd midfielder or preferred midfield 3. And I think that sector is going to be really important for Mexico in these 2 big away matches now coming up. What are you going to do against the United States, who seem to have found a formula in midfield that was very successful for them in October with Musa Adams and McKennie? And then Canada, as I mentioned, who won the midfield battle at the Azteca. What's going to happen now in Edmonton? So that's something that's definitely going to have to it's definitely going to be something to watch out for now moving forward.
Yeah. So if you're talking about this last window, what rating do you give?
I would give a B. I would give a B because you got the points that you needed.
Yeah.
I think getting 7 from 9, that's what I said. But I think when we were on before the October round, that I would have taken 7 from 9, or that should be the target. I was thinking Canada would be the toughest match because they provide real matchup problems for Mexico, who struggle to defend out wide. The fullback positions are their real weakness. And Canada attack really well in that sector through Buchanan and Davies. And so it proved. Also, defensive transitions, set pieces are things that Mexico struggle with, that Canada excel at. So I was expecting that to always be the toughest match for Mexico, although that was one of their 2 home matches. But then they did what they had to do in their following 2 matches. I think Honduras and El Salvador were both disappointing. Over the course of those 2 matches, those 2 teams only managed 1 shot on goal against Mexico. It was in the 2nd minute of the match against El Salvador, a harmless shot right at Guillermo Ochoa. So Mexico were solid enough. They did what they had to do, but I think there was a certain sense of the other 2 teams that they played, the Honduras and El Salvador, didn't really do enough to trouble Mexico either. So I think there are still some concerns, or there are things that haven't been resolved, but getting the points is what matters in the octagonal. Making it to Qatar is what's most important than trying to resolve any issues and how the team's actually playing. Then something you can turn to at that point.
All right, so C+ for Jamaica, B for Mexico. Josh.
Well, we started things off pretty nicely, going to the Azteca to pick up a pretty historic point. And it's not only the fact that Canada picked up the point, which was impressive, and there was always a chance they could do that. But just looking at history, it is a tough toll. It's hard to do. But it was the performance in itself, because I thought personally, and Owen kind of alluded to that a little bit as well, is that we outplayed Mexico. And I think we were a little unlucky maybe not to walk away with 3, even though if you would have told me ahead of the match, you're going to Aztec and picking up a point, I'd been like, fine, that's fair. But I just think it shows what John Herdman has done with this group, bringing confidence. They're beaming. They go into every single match with the anticipation of winning. And it's that winning mentality that I think is just changing the course of how deep and how far this national team can go. Because I was surprised. I didn't know what was going to happen. We went down, we came back, and it was just all smiles, to be honest, for me. And then we moved on and then kind of got a reality check a little bit against Jamaica, especially only because, not that the Jamaican side doesn't have that talented players, because we know that they do, but they've been struggling and they just look like this could be almost a walk in the park, which is not, I mean, going to Jamaica is never easy, but I just figured that it could have been. And even having JD on the channel as well, we discussed it, and it looked like it should have been a win for Canada to really start showing what they're here. And it was a draw, and it was a poor performance in a 0-0 draw. And then finally after that, we had to get a win, because 2 draws from the opening 2 matches kind of puts you in an interesting place. But it was the same system, the same formula that kind of worked to Canada's advantage in the last window. We drew our first 2 there as well, with a poor performance against Honduras, which I relate to Jamaica, and then having a draw against Mexico and US both away was impressive. And then it led to that 3rd match that you absolutely have to win to put you back on track to get the 5 points. And it was against Panama, which was a very similar game to the El Salvador game, where, in my opinion, depth just kind of prevailed. We with some tired legs in the Panama match, in that second half, Canada just had the quality to prevail, and it was a comfortable win at home. So the first window looked almost identical to the second window, in my opinion, which got us 5 points, which puts us on 10, which puts us in 3rd and in a decent position. So a lot of good things. Alphonso Davies is just an animal when it comes to CONCACAF. He's just so much fun. You see some other players stepping up. Buchanan, David got his goal. He was just struggling a little bit. We did miss the presence of Kyle Larone, in my opinion. I think he's performing just a little bit better as that number 9 than David is. But all in all, again, 5 points, 10 points from 2 windows. I'm happy with that. I'd probably give us a B+. I'd say it'd be, because again, the historic point, you can't take anything away from that. But for it to be an A, I think we would have had to get a result against Jamaica, and I was pretty disappointed with it. We did rest a few players, but I still just didn't like the approach, especially after that impressive match against Mexico. So all in all, I think we're sitting pretty right now, and I'd give it a B+.
B+ for Canada. And Josh, I think as an American fan, we look at John Herdman with envy. A sign of a good coach is when you can make your team greater than the sum of its parts. And he's definitely done that with Canada. Yes, they have some talented players, but when they play, you don't see this massive, massive gap between some players and, say, Alphonso Davies. Although clearly, there is a talent gap there, but everybody is on the same page. Everybody knows exactly what their job is, and they play with, this fierce, not only passion, but this tactical setup that is so well articulated on the field. You can tell that's really strong coaching.
Yeah, and doing that against Mexico was a good example of that. I mean, like the likes of 3 players I want to highlight is Stefan Eustachiou through the midfield, and when we play in a back 3, our 2 most important players is our outside right and outside left, which is Miller and Johnston. But we were even training, and I was talking with Oliver Platt, and he said, yeah, they were training in that 3-4-3 system, and then they go to the Azteca and they just throw it a 4-2-3-1 because they can. And then not only did they just throw it a 4-2-3-1 the way they did and go toe-to-toe with Mexico, but everyone knew what they were doing. They had the game plan. They had the structure in play. And in my opinion, that comes down to good coaching. And I'm really impressed with what Herdman's done. And he's taken a step up with this national team, which is why they're sitting pretty right now in 3rd place.
Yeah. Gosh, talking about the U.S. and listening to you guys talk, JT's already laughing. So, it was probably our easiest, window of the entire qualifying campaign. And I expected 9 points, or at the very least 7. And, we started off okay against Jamaica. We put a pretty strong lineup out there. Jamaica were not great. There was still a lot of turmoil. A lot of players weren't there. And we managed to get the 3 points. And we're like, okay, this is positive. We can build on it. It was the first time we'd seen the MMA trio in midfield. in World Cup qualifying. So that was extremely good to see. And then we go down to to Panama, I'm sorry. And Greg decides to make 7 changes. And it wasn't just that he had to make changes. I think we all understood in a 3-game window, there has to be some rotation, but it was who he changed in. We had Matthew Hoppe and Luca De La Torre and Chris Richards and other guys on the bench who he didn't play in Costa Rica. We also had Ricardo Pepi, who, was pulled off in the 60th minute against Costa Rica after scoring 2 goals. And we all assumed he was pulled off because that meant he was going to start in Panama. No, we got Sebastian Lletget, Kellen Acosta, Giassi Zardes, Ariola started again. And we just looked at that. I looked at that lineup before the game and I thought, oh boy, this is not going to go well. And it didn't. It was probably the worst performance in living memory, at least from me, that I've seen the U.S. in a competitive game. Worse than when we played Trinidad and Tobago, and lost to miss out on the World Cup. Like, it was that bad. We didn't have a single shot on target in the entire game. We looked just terrible in every department. And Panama is not like this amazing team that we should be, losing to, or not just losing to, but not even competing with. And I think it highlighted the gap between our first team and what Greg Berhalter perceives as our second team. A lot of the fans don't see these guys as our B team, that they're like C or D. But in Berhalter's mind, and for a lot of reasons, they are the B team. And as we see in this roster, all those guys who performed so poorly are right back in there. So that was very, very, very disheartening, to see that drop in performance from the first game to the second. Luckily, we go back and we have Costa Rica at home. Costa Rica is an aging team, right? Probably more so than anybody in CONCACAF right now. It was their 3rd game. They hadn't been able to rotate, and we restored much of our first team to the lineup. In fact, it was probably the best lineup we've seen from Greg in a long time. We did manage to get a good 2-1 win. There was an impressive part of the game where we looked very fluid and comfortable on the ball for the first time in, I think, forever for the U.S. We've always looked terrible trying to build through midfield and create chances. Where we struggled in that game was, our decision-making in the final third was poor. And our final ball, the final pass, was not often great, which is why it was only 2-1. So it was the second window in a row that I felt we underachieved. If 7 was the minimum, we got 6 points. And for a window like that, that's not good. So I'm going to give us a C- on that one. We're still sitting in second. And, a lot of American fans will point this out when you criticize the coach. Hey, we're sitting in second. What's the problem? Like, the problem is that for the player pool we have, it's not so much sitting in second that's the issue. It's our performances and results have been underwhelming, to be nice about it. And so now we go into 2 very tough games. Jamaica away is going to be a lot tougher than, I think a lot of people think, especially because they have some of their better players there now. And so that's going to be and of course we have Mexico, who, sure, we're at home, but it's going to be a fun game to see how that one sort of plays out. So that's basically recapping the last window. And guys, this is, like I said, this is going to be fun because we have USA, Mexico in the first game. Canada's going to play Mexico after that, and then we go down to Jamaica. So it's going to be an interesting shakeup for all of our teams to see how we come out playing against each other. I was thinking we could start off by just, again, before we go forward, just tell me one lesson that you guys learned from the last window for your team that you should take into account for the upcoming window. Just give me one brief lesson. Josh, you want to start us off?
Alphonso Davies can play as a striker. No, sort of. He actually did. He played as a striker. It reminded me of if you're playing FIFA and it's late in the game and you look at your player with the biggest pace and you toss him up front. It's just kind of how it looked. But no, the biggest lesson I learned from the window was versatility. And saying that, because I am going to use a Davies point, like I said, we when we played in the 4-2-3-1 and got a good performance, and then when we went into the next match against Jamaica, it was a crappy performance. We picked up a point. We move on, and then in Panama, he did something ballsy again. He threw Davies up front, whether that was to manage his minutes a little bit, which I guess it's not really managing his minutes. It's more managing what he's doing on the pitch because he's going to get a lot more movement, and I guess a lot more tired legs if he's playing as a wing back, playing as a winger, than if he's playing as a striker, which is where he played. So maybe it rejuvenated him a little bit, but it was just that versatility and being able to play with his squad and still getting good performances. So I think a little bit more of that is what we need for the 2 upcoming matches, and to be able to have that system and know that if things aren't going your way, you can change things up because you have players that have bought into this system and you can rely on them in several different positions, including a left back playing as a striker.
Okay. All right. So, JD.
For me, it was very easy. Kemar Roof, he came in and, he's a natural central forward, but he dropped a little bit deeper and even went into the cam role, and he was so comfortable. He was so much of an agile player. He has so much dynamic proportion to the team itself. It overall lifted the team. So I think what we learned that we should go back with is using Kemar Roof on the pitch as much as possible, because he adds something different that Jamaica never had in none of the other games then. And over on the right back side, every single council, I've been talking about it, and I think we need to make some improvement. We just don't have a right back, to be honest, because the right backs them just always seems to give problematic situations. But the only thing we saw is when we go with a back 5 or back 3 with advanced right wing back or right midfielder, it seems to help because you relieve the pressure of that right midfielder or right wing back to do less defensive duties. So that helps us. So maybe in the future we should consider using 3 at the back a little bit more. He said he tried it and people in midfield kind of never be in position, but that is Whitmore. He makes excuse for everything and avoid himself from making the excuse, because he is the problem. But he's just saying the players never did what he said he sent them out to do. But he tried. At least he said he tried to play the back 3. All right, I'm going to take his word for it. But use the back 3 a little bit more. So if you play Oni Fisher, I think his ability is much more of a forward going fullback. So it kind of helps him being a wing back naturally. So I think that's the way to go. Use 3 at the back, and whether or not you're using a right midfielder or a right wing back, it might relieve the pressure off them, and they can concentrate and just half masking and going forward to support the attack. And I think Jamaica will be definitely have a threat. I'm not going to jump and blow our horn that we are back, but at least you can be a threat, to be honest, with those 2 things.
All right, Owen.
So I touched on the one I had, like the first one I had, which was that I don't think you can play Guardado and Herrera in the midfield together. But then looking for a second one, I think you learned in the last window, or confirmed in the last window, that Chucky Lozano is the most important attacking player for Mexico. Gets the assist in the Canada match, as I mentioned, and then was really the man of the match, the star man against Honduras. He's also a fan favorite as well. At the Azteca after his goal against Honduras, the fans are chanting his name. There's a chant for him. They just say his name, but it's a very popular chant now with the fans. And he's taken off a few minutes later. The chant is repeated again. So a player who's really coming into his own for Mexico. He's got between goals and assists, he's contributed to 11 goals for Mexico in his last 14 matches. So someone who's beloved by the fans, but is also stepping up and making a difference for Mexico in an attacking sense.
And he's just entering his prime, right? He's 25, 26.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Right. And who's really coming into his own. I think having to battle for his place at Napoli, he's still battling for his place. I think, in their most important matches, I think he probably just shades that right attacking forward spot over Matteo Politano at Napoli, who are the Serie A leaders right now. They're currently ahead on goal difference, I believe, over Milan. They've started the season really well. But he's in a constant fight for his place there. Doesn't play in his preferred position. He's great off the right, but I think he's better off the left. Lorenzo Insigne, though, is there at Napoli. So a player I think who's benefited from that constant competition and playing at a high level in Serie A with a good side like Napoli. And he's been able to translate that growth into the Mexican national team.
All right. Yeah. When you talk about how that has helped him, fighting for his place at Napoli every day, week in, week out, constantly being pushed. I just wish Greg Berhalter was listening. All right, guys. So that's awesome. Let's talk just kind of about, oh, hang on. I didn't do my lesson. I mean, I feel like I touched on my lesson, is that there are certain players that Greg is deeply, truly, madly in love with, who cannot cut it, even in CONCACAF, right? Sebastian Lletget, Kellen Acosta, Christian Roldan, Paul Arriola, and Jassi Zardes are mostly the five that he's so loyal to these guys. It doesn't matter how they
Okay,
perform.
so it's a CONCACAF thing. Okay. That's why Alvas Powell keep getting picked. Okay, now I understand. Wow.
What?
Alvas Powell, you have some players in Jamaica team. One is literally a dancehall musician, and he's in the team. Even though he played somewhat okay, and he's so believing in himself. But if we had picked the right personnel, he would never even come close to the team. His name is Javon Watson. He's like
Yeah.
a 450 years old, and he's in the team right now. But I guess, as you said, it's a CONCACAF thing. So no, I understood why O'Neal Fisher, Alvas Powell, him, and a few other individuals in the team, because they don't do nothing. They said they're picking the team based on performances that should have spanned over the team itself and their clubs. A man coming off injury, he never played a game. So where the performances came from? And the next man, he was in a dancehall meeting, discoing, and then he got selected. So this is weird, but it's a CONCACAF thing. So I would just let it go. No, I understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think even though CONCACAF is maybe not the toughest confederation in the world, if you can't even cut it in CONCACAF, I think that's a pretty bad sign. And I think what's disheartening, I'd say it's a lesson learned from a fan perspective that these guys can't really cut it. But Greg does not appear to have learned that lesson because they're all back for this window as well. So it's going to be very exciting to see how much playing time they all actually get. Speaking of, let's just jump into both rosters and just predicting or previewing rather the upcoming window. I can start this time. We have two tough games, Mexico at home and, Jamaica away. The roster is okay in terms of a starting lineup, but we are missing some really key players. Gio Reyna and Serginho Dest are both out with injury. They're huge, huge players for us, even though they're very young. Gio Reyna arguably was our best attacker when we played Mexico in the Nations League. Christian Pulisic is still nowhere near 100% fit. He's back in the roster, but he just started playing again after 2 months out. I don't imagine he'll be a massive factor in this game, possibly a late sub. And then kind of inexplicably, well, not completely inexplicably, but we left John Brooks, our most senior experienced center back, who has been excellent for us for 8 years now, but had 2 poor games. And instead of just being dropped from a starting lineup, he's dropped from the roster altogether against Mexico, the toughest team to face. It baffles a lot of us because, on the one hand, you can appreciate the sort of sense of accountability where if you're not performing, you get dropped. That's how it should be. But at the same time, there are many players not performing for the U.S. who never get dropped. So it really reeks of double standard by Mr. Berhalter and has the large majority of the fan base feeling very frustrated with this sort of double standard. And I'm sure the players see that too. They're not dumb, right? They see John Brooks getting dropped after 2 bad performances, but Sebastian Lletget, 35, 36, he just keeps going no matter how he plays. Christian Roldan has 1 assist and 0 goals in 30 games for the U.S. He's still there. Like Luca De La Torre, who's been performing really well in Holland, had an excellent game against Ajax, a really ignored completely, got 12 minutes in the last roster, created 2 chances in 12 minutes, not even on this roster. Matthew Hoppy's not been getting playing time at Mallorca, but that's the other thing. We didn't bring a backup striker for Ricardo Pepi, and then Greg Berhalter says, we expect Ricardo Pepi, to play the majority of these 2 games. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if you guys know the story, but Napoleon, he rode up to, I think the Moscow gates or something, and the ambassador came out to see him, or he came to the Russian border with his army, and the ambassador came out to see him, and he said, I propose to destroy Russia. And the Russian ambassador looks at him and says, well, sir, man proposes, but God disposes. And I'm like, what happens if Ricardo Pepi goes down in the 5th minute against Mexico with an injury? Or what if, as an 18-year-old, he's just having a bad game and we don't have a proper sub? Now, he brought Jesus Ferreira in. Guy's not playing as a striker for Dallas. So to throw him in, a 20-year-old in a different position as a false 9 against Mexico, not sure. I know he said Tim Weah can play as a striker, but I would at least have liked him to bring maybe a Daryl Dike or somebody who offers us something different. Because if you're a goal down against Mexico or even Jamaica, somebody with an aerial threat, with a physical presence who you can get in the box and just maybe try to hit them, just to vary it up a little, I would have liked to see that. So very, very baffling. decisions from Greg. That being said, if we have a pretty decent starting lineup, if he gets a starting lineup right for both games, we could be fine, and we don't need to rotate heavily because it's only 2 games and there's a 4-day gap. Will Greg get his tactics and his lineups right? That remains to be seen, and that's sort of the question mark for this window. But like I said, if we get that MMA midfield is going to be very interesting if we see it. How does it do against Mexico? Because we haven't seen that yet, right? Last time we played Mexico, it was the Gold Cup. We had Sebastian Lletget and I think Kellen Acosta in midfield. In the Nations League, it was McKennie and Acosta. So I'm very curious to see with these 3 guys how that's going to play against Mexico. And then and against Mexico too, who we play on the wings. Because like Owen has said, their weakness is the fullbacks, right? If we put Tim Weah and Brendan Aronson as our wingers, we could do some damage against Mexico. I have a feeling Paul Arriola is going to be playing against Mexico because Greg loves him. The other question mark for us is defensively. Without John Brooks and Serginho Dest, it's probably going to be Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman. Now, both of those guys have performed well in the past, and certainly Miles Robinson against Mexico has a good record in the Gold Cup final. But, Walker Zimmerman, we've only really seen him against pretty poor CONCACAF teams. So it will be a test for him probably to see how does he step up. And again, the fact that Chris Richards probably won't start against Mexico, or we will be surprised if he does, even though he's playing at a very high level in Germany with excellent performances. Again, it's just a bone that we have to pick with our beloved coach. Every time JD talks about Theodore Whitmore being the problem, I that meme of the 2 guys arm wrestling? Where it's like that brings 2 people together. It's like Jamaica and the U.S. when it comes to their coaches. All right, so that's sort of the U.S. in a nutshell. Owen, do you want to talk about Mexico?
Yeah, so not a very controversial squad. So 4 players out with respect to October, 3 in. So 1
Which
player
4?
less in total. What was that?
Which 4?
So the 4 who are out are Jonathan Orozco, who was the 4th goalkeeper, Jonathan Dos Santos, who's at LA Galaxy, who didn't play a lot in the last window. Aurelian Tuna, I think, is probably the big surprise. There's rumors of a little injury there as well, but he wasn't likely to start either than Alexis Vega through injury, who I think is probably of those 4, the one who could have hoped to have some minutes. But again, none of the players either going out or coming in were likely to start either of the 2 matches. So it's nothing that's going to change the starting 11s, I don't think, for either of the matches. I think Tata Martino has his core still with him, carrying over from October. All the big European players are there, having Chucky and Raul continuing their progression, continuing their recovery from injury. They're both there. I think those are the big players to watch, certainly.
Any thoughts on how, if there's no Herrera and Guardado against, or you're saying you wouldn't line up Herrera and Guardado against the U.S., especially against an MMA midfield?
No, I wouldn't. I think I would expect Charlie Rodriguez to play against Mexico. He's played in all the away matches so far for Mexico. And he's done well, certainly in 2 of those 3. Against Panama, he was a little bit ineffective and was taken off at halftime. But he's a player who keeps possession pretty well. He's more of an 8 than he is a number 10, although he'll probably be the most advanced midfielder. But I think he could be really important considering you're playing away from home. You're going to want to keep as much of the ball as possible, take the sting out of things. I think he's a player I would expect to see there over Sebastian Cordova, who I think is the other option there as that most advanced midfielder. He's the only player in the squad who comes close to being what you could call a traditional number 10, who can provide that. But I think considering that Mexico have 2 tough away games here against probably the other 2 best teams in the octagonal, to play a number 10 in those matches, Cordova isn't the type of number 10 either who really comes into contact a lot with the ball. I think it could potentially be wishful thinking. I think the chances are that he could potentially just be not as involved as you want him to be. I think he could be a good option to have on the bench. You could also potentially see Luis Romo in there, as I mentioned, if you want to do a double pivot. But I certainly against the United States, I would expect to see Charlie there. He also started in the Nations League final in midfield for Mexico as well. So I would expect that to carry over. I'd expect, if you're looking at the Nations League final team, who you're going to play against the United States, now in Cincinnati, I would expect up to 8 of those players who started in Denver to be starting in Cincinnati.
Is Artiaga in the roster?
No, Artiaga isn't in the squad. So there are a couple who are left out. So Artiaga is, so he the situation with him is that there's no injury, but there was a disagreement that's still ongoing between Tata Martino and his staff and Artiaga himself. So he said no to an Olympic call-up, citing personal reasons, and then hasn't been included in a Mexico national team squad since. Osvaldo Rodriguez, who's at Leon, has been chosen in his stead, kind of as the backup to Jesus Gallardo. A lot of people recognizing that left back is the real weak spot. I think one of the positives to come out of October is that Jorge Sanchez, although he only played one match, he was injured against Honduras and El Salvador. I thought he looked really good against Canada, and he held his own against Alphonso Davies. If you look at where the Canada goal comes from, it is from Davies, but Davies tucking inside and really playing in that moment on that play is more of a number 10, sliding the ball through for Jonathan Osorio. It was really a mistake from Nestor Araujo, the center back. So Jorge Sanchez did very well in that match. I think while not necessarily a guarantee defensively or someone who you can, fully rely on now going towards Qatar, I think he's marked himself out as the starter. There's a little bit more clarity in that position, but left back, although Jesus Gallardo is one of the players with the most minutes and the most matches under Martino, he's a player who doesn't really convince. And a lot of people would like to see Gerardo Arteaga given a shot there, but it's not going to be happening certainly in November. And we'll see how that issue between Martino and Arteaga, Martino's staff and Arteaga progresses. If he does end up getting a chance, he's been playing a lot at Genk. He's a starter there. He's been playing in the Europa League, played well by all accounts against West Ham on Thursday. So a player who could definitely improve Mexico in that position. But as things stand, I think with Gallardo there, that's a weak point for Mexico. As I mentioned, so Vega's out with injury. Also, Diego Lainez isn't there. He's not at 100% either. He's been back with Betis. He's played a few matches, but he hasn't come off the bench in the last 3 or 4 matches. Still working his way back from the injury he picked up against Japan in the bronze medal match at the Olympics. He ended up coming out on the field for celebrations there in a cast on his leg, some ankle sprain issues that he had. So he's still not back at 100%. He's a player who, while not necessarily a starter, I think what he did in the summer, what he did in the Nations League final with the goal that gave Mexico the lead, very temporarily for only a minute or two, I think he's a player who would be an important option off the bench, certainly, if nothing else, for Martino, potentially even a starter right now, because Tecatito Corona, I think, will start certainly against the United States. He's a player who likes playing against the United States, likes playing in the big matches, but he's not having a good season at Porto. Has played only 75 minutes in his last 6 matches there. Didn't make it off the bench in the Champions League in midweek. And he's a player who's flattered to deceive as well for Mexico now for a number of months in the summer, especially in the Gold Cup. People were expecting him to really step up without Chucky there, or once Chucky got injured without Chucky there, with Raul Jimenez not there as well through his injury. It didn't really happen for him in the Gold Cup. But without Alexis Vega there now, without Diego Lainez, even without an Oriol Antuna, there's not really a natural alternative to Tecatito Corona, for example. You've got Orbelín Pineda there, who can play more off the left, but he's not necessarily even a natural winger either. He's been played there and I think has been pretty effective, all things considered, but there aren't a lot of alternatives to someone like Tecatito. Not a lot of alternatives right now in this squad in wide forward positions.
It's crazy to me that you talk about Diego Lainez getting injured in the Olympics and how it's kind of hampered his season and hampered his progress. Meanwhile, Arteaga, who probably turned down that Olympics call for similar reasons, he wanted to solidify his position with his club, because if you're not playing for your club, you're not going to get called in probably, right? So he's trying to do that, and then he gets penalized for that in a place where Mexico really does need help. And I've seen him at Genk. He's a strong left back. I'm just very surprised they can't resolve whatever it is that's going on between them,
Yeah, no, it would definitely be to Mexico's benefit if they could. A player who gets forward really well. Came through the Santos Academy. Santos have one of the strongest academies in Mexico and have made a habit of producing really good left backs in the last few years. Jesus Angulo, who actually plays at center back now, he's at Atlas, but he was in the Olympic squad, was starting in the pre-Olympic tournament as well at center back for Mexico. He's a very solid young player. And then Omar Campos is the one who's coming through right now. Started as a winger, as a wide forward when he came to the Santos Academy, but has been reconverted into a left back and has been starting now at Santos for a number of months. Really had his breakthrough towards the back end of the Guardianes 2021. So So April, May of 2021 was really important for them and their run to the final that season. And Artiaga is one of the players on that off of that production line, certainly at the left back position.
All right, JD.
All right. Oh my God. The roster. Let me just start with the ones that did make the roster. We have Ethan Pinnock, Jamal Lowe, Daniel Johnson, Javane Brown, a very young fullback playing for Vancouver in the United States. So I think he's I can't understand the logic around leaving this kid, but he's very much of a good guy that he needed to get the experience around him. But for some reason, Albus Powell will be there because, as you know, the roster made with his name first on the list, so he can't be erased. So he's there for some reason. And then you have Wes Harding and those guys never made the listing, but you have O'Neill Fisher. You get me? So really and truly, we have a top-heavy team with just pure strikers. So I guess we're going to have to score 15 goals and then try not to concede much to win the games then. So that's my problem, because the depth is not there with the defensive situation. Now you have 3 centre-backs there. So if one goes down, natural centre-backs I meant. So if one goes down, we have to take Aka, which is Javine Watson, the DJ. Yes.
We just call him Dance Hall now.
Yes, the dance hall man. He has to go in defense, or we have to put Albus Powell, which is
How old
injured.
is Javon Watson? Sorry,
I think he's around 39 to be exact.
Oh
you know,
my God.
he's around 37 to 39. I need to check his correct age, so I stopped saying he's like 4,000 years old. He's around. he's up there in age though. He's a nice guy. He adds a little bit of vibes, you know. Yes. So he has to be one of the backup centre backs them in the squad, because Albus Powell is always injured, but he's always on the team sheet. So he's a secondary individual that they can use for also a backup as well. And then lastly, the actual defensive central in the team, which is Anthony Grant. He might be a backup centre back as well if it's needed. So we picked an unbalanced squad. We don't have much midfielders in the squad, and we don't have much centre backs. And then we have a bunch of players that we wouldn't use on any normal day, which is the right backs them, and they're in the team in loads, you know. So I think I'm hoping that the strikers them like Mikel Antonio, finally they have figured out the communication error that led him not turn up the last time for reasons I don't know. The biggest star in the field, you have communication error to bring him in the team.
Yeah.
I just don't know when it comes on. This federation is something else. Well, because I pressed them and proved, because I went above and beyond to find out what really happens. This guy was packed and ready to come to Jamaica, and someone in the federation literally said he should not come. That is exactly what happened. So wanted him to come
for the roster by the coach, and someone in the
Yes.
federation said, "Don't come."
Someone said he should come at first, and then someone said he shouldn't come. Because
Do you
at
know
first
why
he
they said
wanted his physio to come with him. It was assigned that his physio should come with him, and then someone said, we have 2 capable physio here. So like they're saying, why is he going over the top like he's extra big shot? Yes, he is a big shot. That's why he requires those things. So if you don't want to bring his physio, then, well, he's not going to turn up. And then they stated it this time because they realized that the JFF might be misleading people. So they made sure wrote it on the Western page and said, listen to me, we wanted him to come and we signed off on him to come. But they didn't brought the physio, that's why. And we were paying for it. So all they needed to do was sign the paper. And the guys were going to come there without any other expense. They didn't have to pay anything.
So hang on, you're saying that Antonio would have paid for his own physio to
every
come?
single thing. It's written. You can go on the website. It's there, and they never let him turned up. So this time he's around. That's a big plus. And Roof scoring, that's a big one. Andre Gray, he played the other day against Cardiff and he actually scored. but he came off in the 54th minute. So we're not 100% sure because he said, because sometimes the players talk and then it doesn't turn out the exact way. So he said he's fine. He just has a knock and he never wanted to make it worse. So we have to wait and see if he's going to turn up. But aside from that, the starting 11, it's okay to give anyone a challenge. That's what I like. It's okay because the strikers and Ravel Morrison and those guys added to the squad, they are some X-factor player that can come out and do something special. And Jamaica has been playing pretty much for a long while based on X-factor. Just try to go to the go-to guy and get something. And Liam Bailey coming in, I'm not sure about Liam Bailey either because he plays 2 games and he looks like he's not fit. He's trying to play in the games, so he's trying to get up to speed. And right now, the Premier League, they have some rules. If you're not 100%, if you're not over 80%, they can cook up the books and said you're injured. And then you can't get to come. So we have to still watch Liam Bailey. So for the individuals that are Jamaicans, look out for Andre Gray and Liam Bailey. They might not turn up. They might not turn up. So it's not because the Rasta is a fake news, because I know people talk about the fake news Jamaicans. Well, it's not because the Rasta is a fake news. They were listed, but because games still playing. So people can be injured. You understand me? So that's the reason why maybe they don't come. But if they do, that would be a big bonus and we will go from strength to strength. Then you have a last addition that added to the squad, Greg Lay. It's a good player. He's an okay player, to be honest. But he has never been playing with these young, new set of crops. And I think that's the problematic situation for we. Every single time we keep going for new players and said, okay, you never play with those guys? Let me put you in the team. Let's see if we can cause as much confusion. Because we have Amari Bell that we could have called and we never called him. So I think that's the problem. Unbalance and confusion going forward. So hopefully with the actual qualities of the players up front can take us over the line. But I'm expecting games that we're going to win is not going to finish 1-0. It's not going to finish 1-0. If it finishes 1-0, I'm pretty much surprised. People, you can quote me on that. If it finishes 1-0, I'm pretty much surprised. Here we are going to get some shootout games. Believe me.
All right. Well, at least it'll be entertaining, right?
No. I'm going to stress out on those streams.
Entertaining for the neutrals, right? It was so great. I remember watching the Canada-Mexico game with no stakes in it, right? And it was just so great because you're watching it just for entertainment, and it was a fantastic game to watch, right? But then when you watch your own team play, you can't just enjoy it, right?
Yes, man. The stress is all the time. But the Canada game, you're talking in the Gold Cup, right? The one in the Gold Cup,
No, I'm
right?
talking about this last one.
Okay,
in the last
I thought the one in the Gold Cup was
also
that's
good.
when I knew that Canada has actually arrived.
Yeah.
Yes, they really played Mexico well. Yes.
All right, Josh.
Well, I don't know how I can top what JD just went on about, but I will try. Canada doesn't have that much drama on those stakes of thing. This was a pretty consistent roster with what a lot of people were thinking it was going to be. I don't need to highlight the entirety. Our strongest keepers are here. This is pretty much as strong as a team you're gonna want with Larone being available, Cavallini coming in. Not that Cavallini is going to be used, but Davies is going to be there. David's going to be there. Hutch is even there. Like this is a full stacked Canada roster. The one big touching point, which I'm sure you guys have probably heard of, is out of absolutely nowhere. We just picked up another Canadian men's national team player. It was Ike Ugbo, which is a player who he was born in England. He played in the Chelsea Youth Academy. And through my knowledge and talking to some of my sources, I predicted, because the whole rumor was going around of who this player was, I predicted him because a couple of our viewers reached out to us and said, hey, I think it might be Ugbo. And we didn't know why. It wasn't even documented of how long he actually lived in Canada. But apparently he moved to Canada when he was 4 or 5 and lived there till he was about 9-ish before going back to England, where he was a part of the Chelsea Academy. He went on loan last year at Bruges in Bruges, the not as talented Bruges side in Belgium. He put up 16 goals in 32 matches to get a move to Genk, which is, by the way, guys, that's our new CONCACAF Council side. Just in case you didn't know, Mark McKenzie, Ugbo, Artiaga, and Liam Bailey. I'm not pointing. Liam Bailey used to play for them, so just
All
in
right.
case the CONCACAF Council needs a club, it's
We
Genk.
can unite over
The
that.
gank. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go, guys. A
Club level.
lot of love. But with all that being said, it came out of absolutely nowhere, and it was a position that isn't as important as probably getting a center back, just with our aging center back, and a lot of our Canadian national team fans think that it's not the strongest center back pool. We would hope for more, but we did lack a little bit of striker depth with Lair not being available.
So he's a forward.
He's a striker. He's an out and out number 9. He's
Okay.
From the highlights we've seen, because I haven't been following him too much besides finding out the fact that he's Canadian yesterday. He looks like a proper number 9. He looks like a poacher, someone who will make those runs. Solid finisher from what I can see as well. He was going to switch his allegiance to Nigeria in September, and then he obviously had John Herdman going in there and found out that he was eligible and was able to switch him to commit for Canada, and he's included in this upcoming roster. So a massive surprise, which came out yesterday, but other than that, it just strengthens our striker pool, and we have 4 strikers now. Cavallini, who I'm expecting not to play much. Ugbo, who again I'm still not expecting to play much, maybe 20 minutes off the bench in both matches. David Laren, that's a strong striker pool. US might be a little jealous considering you guys only took 1 striker. A little surprised DK.
Especially since David was born in New York and we lost him to you, right?
I know. It's there. But yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited to see what this kid can do. I'm gonna keep a closer eye on Genk now, especially because it's the CONCACAF Council, our team now. But yeah, I don't know. I'm really liking this squad. We only took a 23-man squad, which I thought was interesting. I personally would have maybe wanted an extra winger rather than bringing Cavallini, because I think his Vancouver Whitecaps form is atrocious. He's not even playing, but regardless, he does compete. He's got 16 goals in 27 matches for the Canadian national team, so you can't really bark against his goal scoring record for the national team. But it was a lot of hype. It was the most hype I've seen around the Canadian national team Twitterverse when that name was going around, and we have a new striker to join the mix and hopefully put a run in for the upcoming games.
So what are your chances of getting Tomori? Is that still a thing that I heard was discussed? Is it realistic or no?
No, I mean, it's funny. The rule change that allowed Tomori to be eligible for Canada again was apparently the same rule change that allowed Ugbo to be able to represent Canada. So Ugbo obviously went over. He's now a Canadian national team player. And Tomori, if he would have waited till November 2022, would have became eligible again. It's 3 years after your last competitive match for the nation that you've already represented, which was England. So everyone is getting hyped up, being like, all right, well, just in time, November 2022, he'll be eligible. And then he played in the last window for England. So technically, he's eligible. I think there's a certain amount of caps you'd have to get, but he wouldn't be eligible if he is at all, because I honestly, who knows at this point. But if he is, it would be 3 years from the last date he played, which would take us to 2024. Yeah. So no, everyone keeps asking me, no. Tomori will never play in a Canadian national team jersey. It's a loss. He'll be playing for England and not getting called up because, other coaching issues we won't get into here. But yeah, it's a shame. Tomori would have been massive, but he will not play for Canada.
Yeah. All right. So guys, let's do this. Looking forward at the roster. We know we have big games. We talked about, some dysfunction with some of us, some quality going in. I want to talk, everybody tell me 2 reasons why your team is going to have a good window. Let's start with Owen.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
So 2 reasons why your team is going to have a good window.
Okay, so the first one is having Raul and Chucky in form. I mentioned Chucky's good recent numbers with Mexico. Raul's are actually even better. So in his last 19 appearances, granted stretch over a bigger period of time given his long injury, in his last 19 appearances for Mexico, he has 18 goals, 4 assists. So a player who's really done a lot for Mexico recently, and also is in really good form. 2 goals, 2 assists in his last 5 appearances for Wolves. One of those was a late substitute appearance, so only 4 starts there. Chucky with a goal in his last match for Napoli in the Europa League. And I think just the experience as well that Mexico bring into this squad, having 2 really tough away matches, probably the 2 toughest matches they'll have in this octagonal. You're able to call within this 27-man squad, you have 6 players who have been to multiple World Cups, 2 of whom in Guillermo Ochoa and Andres Guardado have been to 4 and are going for their 5th. Hector Moreno has also been to 3. And a couple of those players, you're going to have Ochoa starting shortly.
Ochoa has been to 4 World Cups?
Has been to 4.
So his first one was 06?
He hasn't played it all 4, but he's been to 4.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and 36. I mean, who knows? Maybe even 2026 if he really committed to it potentially. But yeah, so you have that experience. if you're also looking at the win in Columbus in 2016, the side that played that match, that started that match, you have 5 starters from that match who are now in this 27-man squad, and a 6 Tuki Lozano who came off the bench and started, or excuse me, who played some that day in Columbus. So players who have experience going to the United States and getting a win as well in qualifying, I think could be important. So that's something that Mexico will lean on, certainly, in these 2 difficult matches.
All right, JD.
For me, it's very easy. The strike force that has been added now, Liam Bailey, Antonio, I think that's a good thing to look forward for, and I think that can galvanize them to get results even with not playing well, because most of our games we weren't the better team. Most of our games that we even got points out of. So I think that's the added depth to not playing well and still getting points. But if we do play well, and these guys will definitely dominate games if we do play well. But we still can pick up points without even playing well with these guys, Liam Bailey and Mikel Antonio, 2 of the best, I'm sure of, in the region. And then the second one is the fact that we are finally getting players repeatedly playing together. Like the top players that we wanted in the team, some of them getting game times together. So I think they're gelling. So like Anthony Grant, former Chelsea individual, he's really settling in the team and becoming one of the best players in the team itself. Roof himself, he gets more game time. He looks very, very good. And a few other individuals coming in. Liam Moore, he had a very good Gold Cup. I think he's going to change something. The last time he was injured. So him and Damian Lowe, they had a partnership, so hopefully they can turn on back that partnership from the Gold Cup to make it very solid. But those are the 2 things: familiarity between the individuals, them, and Liam Bailey and Mikel Antonio. Hopefully Liam Bailey doesn't get an injury tonight, yes.
All right, Josh.
The first one's obvious. This is I'm pretty sure this is probably the strongest ever qualifying squad you'll ever put together. I mean, looking back at the last windows and the Gold Cup, I mean, there's players that just weren't available. This squad has everything. I don't think there's a player really that would make a big difference that I'd want to hear. Like I've already mentioned, Larone, Davies, Hutch is in there, Eustachio's in there, Borjan's back. This is the best version of Canada's national team you're going to find. So I think the fact that everyone found out to be healthy around the same time, plus it's only a 2-match window, means that more than likely your best players are going to be able to play both matches, which I think is going to be huge. That's the one big point. I'm excited to see and confused to see what Herbin's going to do with this, because it's hard to fit every single one of those stars on the pitch and play a proper system. The other big reason why I think we'll be successful is we're at home for both. We're moving up to Edmonton. We're going to be in the cold, rainy, miserable Friday night, and I'm excited to see how the climate is going to change with some of the opposition coming in. But it'll be interesting, because I've already had people reaching out to me saying, Josh, it's supposed to be freezing rain up in Edmonton on Friday when we take on Costa Rica. So I'm curious to see how it will, if it'll actually benefit Canada, which it should. But regardless, I think regardless of being the home team for both matches, I think it's fantastic, because we've obviously been on the road more than we've been at home, and now we get 2 back-to-back in this window. Less travel. That should be another big reason why Canada could be successful with the 2 upcoming games.
All right. 2 reasons why the U.S. is going to be successful in this window. Greg Berhalter is going to pick a strong starting lineup and not tamper with it for both games, because you can afford to play at least pretty much the same team in both games. A 4-day gap. There's only 2 games. There's no reason to rotate, specifically because of the drop-off in quality for us. And the other reason is that Mexico is going to come to the U.S., I think, with the summer on their mind. I don't think they can afford to lose to the U.S. 3 times in a year, and I think that's going to play on them. They have to win this game, because I think they'll get crucified by the Mexican media. And that can go 2 ways. It can motivate them and have them be like, we got to win this one. Or it can make them go in their shell, and they can show up afraid and scared and nervous about the repercussions of losing again. So I think that will be one of the reasons why the U.S. will do well. Now, guys, let's go ahead and talk about reasons why our teams may not do well. 2 reasons why we might struggle in this window. Josh, kick us off.
I'm going to actually use the same points I used for the why we'll be successful in a way. I'm just going to say the one reason is if Herdman feels obligated to get the best players on the pitch, and I mean like getting Larone, David, who honestly those two haven't played super well together. They don't really gel off each other, which is surprising. And finding the proper system, if Herdman can't get it right, it may have an effect. If he tries to force his way to play like a 4-4-2 and it's an unbalanced system to just get the stars on, it backtracks against them, and they have openings through the midfield and in the back line. And the other one would be actually switching up, because we're used to playing in Toronto, and now we're going to Edmonton. It's going to be new for the players as well. It's not that home feel that they have playing at BMO where they're all used to. So maybe it gives them that vice versa. Whether it's good or bad, we'll find out. I'm assuming it's going to be good, but you don't know. It's a fresh environment, fresh settings there, and we'll have to see how they can cope with it.
All right, JD.
Josh said, you don't know. Well, I know. I'm going to add 3, not 2, because the first one is Theodore Whitmore. You know. Yes, so that is, if they are going to lose games, it's going to be him first. And then the second one, I would say the thin roster, basically in midfield and defense, I think it's going to become problematic. And then the third one will be singling out the right side of right side of right back area, where in which we said we have to lift it and play a back 3 in order to make sure there is pretty much solid. The 2 reasons why I would go a little bit in depth to say it's a right back is not just the right back alone. Damian Lowe naturally plays over the right hand side of centre back, and he's prone to make at least 1.8 errors per game, which is not good because those are always leading to goals. He's a fantastically gifted athletic defender, but you should not always use your athleticism to recover. You understand me? You should make sure you do the simple things correct. So if you put him and Albus Powell there, it's just made for mistakes. You can just call them mistakes. To be honest, you're going to have 2 big errors, so people can just prepare to just look out to take those chances. So that's why I said just lift the back 3 if Topper watching, because I know he watches the internet, because he said social football doesn't play on social media. He's just trying to show shades, but clearly he's watching and maybe he's seeing this video. So definitely change your back 2 to a back 3, that 2 of your individuals that cements in your team can do better, because they are mistakes factories. Yes, so those are the 3 for me.
All right, Owen.
I think to start, the big one is that the matches you're playing are going to be very difficult. You've got the 2 biggest matches or 2 toughest matches on the calendar, on the entire octagonal calendar, coming up back to back within a couple of days of each other, going to the United States, then going to Canada. Especially, I think the United States certainly is the biggest rivalry match that Mexico had. And like you touched on, Pete, there's that need to make up for what happened in the summer, those 2 losses, and there'll be a lot of pressure from the Mexican press to be able to do that. And if that doesn't happen, what could come down then from the press? So there's a lot of pressure naturally in that match. But I think actually Canada present more matchup problems, which was seen at the Azteca. I think they're a very difficult matchup for the United States, for Mexico. Their strengths really hit at Mexico's weaknesses. So I think both of those matches, just in general, I think are going to be really tough for Mexico. But then when you also consider, I think there's a little bit of still lack of clarity at key positions over who will be starting. I mentioned that third midfield position. Is it going to be Charlie Rodriguez? Are you going to put Sebastian Cordova there? Who suits Mexico best in the really important games? And then also at center back, at left-sided center back, particularly Cesar Montes has marked himself out as the starter at right center back and has played really well over this qualifying campaign so far. But at left center back, it's a little bit less clear. Nestor Araujo really didn't look good in the last window, got a red card also against El Salvador, so he wouldn't be able to play against the United States regardless, but was also culpable for the goal against Canada. I don't think he's likely to be starting much anymore. Then you have Hector Moreno, who's getting up there in age, recently gone back to Monterrey. You've also got Johan Vasquez as well, the young Genoa center back now who recently moved to Europe, has been getting a consistent run of games now. He's started 4 times consecutively in Serie A after not playing at all the first month and a half that he was there in Italy. He's a player who could potentially come in, but again, there are partnerships that there isn't a defined partnership at such an important position like center back is at roughly a year out from from the World Cup, and then also on the eve of Mexico's two most important matches in this qualifying cycle.
All right. And like JD, I'm going to go with 3 because, number 1 is Greg Berhalter. Right? It's just, you don't know what he's going to do. He's unpredictable. He makes baffling decisions, both in terms of, lineups and tactics. And sometimes he gets it right and you're like, okay, great, he's learning. And then the next game, you're like, no, he isn't. He just goes back to, so you just don't know what you're going to get from Greg. And if we perform poorly, it will be because of one of his baffling decisions. The other 2 reasons that I think we might perform poorly are that we're going to try to press Mexico very high. I know that's the way Berhalter is going to want to play. And if that high press is not coordinated to a T and Mexico plays through us, which they certainly have the technical ability to do so, we could be very, very exposed at the back. Or, as we saw in the Nations League, Mexico just says, fine, come press us high, we'll lump it over you, and now you have 1v1 merchants like Tecatito and Lozano going up against our fullbacks and attacking our back line. So that, if we don't get it right, that'll be a reason why Mexico will have a lot of success against us. And the third thing is that, both Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie are 1 yellow card away from suspension. So if they get that against Mexico, which is very possible considering how those games go, we could be going down to Jamaica with Kellen Acosta and Sebastian Lletget in our starting lineup, which if I'm Jamaica, I'm smelling blood there. So there are reasons why, we could have a rough window. We'll see how it actually pans out. Guys, we're almost at an hour. The last thing we got to do, as usual in every video, is once again say where we think our team is going to finish when all is said and done in the Ocho. JD?
I think I want to say we're going to contest for the 4th spot, but it's possible we can get the 3rd spot. That's what I want to say now, because I'm seeing a little more light, It's going to continuously grow on me, Yeah.
All right. I like your positivity, JD.
Yes. Topper will get fired soon, Yes.
All right, Owen?
I see Mexico finishing first. I think they've got 2 tough matches right now, potentially if they were to lose one of them or drop points in one or both. I think it would get closer certainly at the top, but they've got a 3-point lead over the United States, a 4-point lead over Canada, who are their 2 closest chasers right now. And I think they're the most consistent side in this octagonal, with the United States between Berhalter and the youth that's in the team, the inexperience in a World Cup qualifying campaign. I think there's going to continue to be ups and downs there potentially. And then with Canada also, as good as they've looked, I think also it's a team who's really going through their first, who's really making a big step right now in World Cup qualifying. This is something that's a little bit unprecedented for them, certainly in the last 30 years or so. So Mexico have been there, they've done that. I think that experience has served them well so far. They're still undefeated in this qualifying campaign, and I expect them to maintain a hold on first place. Certainly by the time the octagonal is over, I'd expect them to be there as well still.
All right, Josh.
Sorry to JD's optimism, but I'm pretty confident 3rd place will fall to the Canadians there. But
yeah,
but I do think Jamaica will push. I think this upcoming window will be a big one for them, but it'll also be a big one for Canada. But if they can answer it, I think they make 3rd place a little bit more realistic for them.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with 2nd again. I mean, to be honest, I'm having some doubts that, Berhalter might screw this up and we might actually get 3rd because Canada is looking very strong. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. But to Owen's point about the Americans' inexperience in World Cup qualifying, what's strange is that our best performers in qualifying so far have been our youngest guys. And our quote-unquote experienced guys have actually been the poor performers. So, we were told a lot before this qualifying campaign that you need to have experience, and it just hasn't played out that way from an American perspective. John Brooks, DeAndre Yedlin, Sebastian Lletget, Paul Arriola have been the guys that have let us down, whereas Ricardo Pepi, Serginho Dest, Tyler Adams, Anthony Robinson, Musa, these are the guys that have really stepped up when it counted. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Do you have something to say, JD?
Yeah, but you didn't give Berhalter credit, because you just said we talked up before that what's his name again? John Brooks ain't playing well, and then he actually left him out, right?
Yeah.
because he ain't playing well. So I think we should give him at least 1 point for that. You know?
Well,
because,
no, because
oh, okay.
here's why. Now, here's why I don't give him credit. Because I don't think that that is an appropriate response to 2 bad games, right? If you play 45 times for the US and then you have 2 poor games, I understand maybe you get dropped from one lineup, okay? Just sort of a reminder that, hey.
Okay.
But to completely take him out of the roster altogether in one of our most difficult games, and to not then apply that same standard to numerous other players who have been far worse than John Brooks is the problem, right? It's a lack of consistency, and it's an overreaction to what Brooks did, but then doesn't apply across the board. So I'm not giving him a point for that.
Okay, so he's still back in the camp with Theodore Whitmore. Okay.
Yes, he's very much in the Theodore Whitmore camp. Guys, thank you so much. People always enjoy these videos, and we will definitely get together after this exciting camp to talk about it. It's almost half. I think after the first game, we'll be halfway through qualifying. So, going to get closer and closer to deciding those top 3 or 4 spots. Thanks for joining me, guys. Anybody else have anything to say?
No, it was a pleasure.
Yeah, pleasure as always.
Go gang.
Tupper out. Theodore Whitmore out.
All right,
Thanks,
guys,
super
go
fans.
follow. I will put the descriptions for both JD and Josh's YouTube channels in the description. Owen, the best place for people to find you is on Twitter. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
All right, as you can see at 4Kicks blog right there. Go give these gentlemen a follow. CONCACAF is getting stronger. It's getting better, and it's getting more fun. So thanks for joining me, guys.